Good evening, class. Now I know today during the period we really quickly went over how to simplify radicals. So I wanted to put a video up that reminds us of what we went over in class, and I want to go a little more in depth. I'm going to cover it tomorrow as well, but if you see this video tonight, it may help you on your homework assignment as well. So remember in class, we had something like, we'll use the example, radical 120. Again, the radical means the square root of. And on our problem, we want to simplify this. So we want to write this in the most simplest form. So we don't have to type in radical 120 in our calculator. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to our factor tree method. We're going to find two factors of 120. I'm going to pick the factors 12 and 10. All right. You could also pick the factors 2 and 60, or you can pick 3 and 40. Lots of options you could choose, but I'm going to choose 12 and 10. And I'm going to continue to factor those two numbers until I get all prime numbers at the bottom. So the two factors I can think of 12 are 3 and 4. Remember, class, factors mean two numbers that multiply to get the bigger number, so 3 times 4 equals 12. Two factors of 10 would be 2 and 5. Now let's look at all these factors. Can I factor 3 any further? I cannot, so that is a prime number. The only factors of 3 are 1 and itself, 3. So 3 is a prime number. What about the number 4? The answer is yes. 4 factors into 2 times 2. Again, multiplication. We know that 2 is also a prime number. The only factors of 2 are 1 and 2. As we said earlier, 2 is a prime number, so we have 2 here. And then 5 can't be factored either. It is also prime. So now we've circled all 5 of our prime numbers. So we're going to rewrite them all down here. I'll rewrite them in a different color. Grab a different color real quick. So I'm going to rewrite them in brown. So radical 120 is equal to radical 3 times 2 times 2 times another 2, so I have 1, 2, 3 2's, times 5. All right. From here, we're going to pull out pairs. All right. Like we did before, we're going to pull out pairs. So I have a pair of 2's right here, and I don't have any other pairs. And when I find a pair, I pull out one of them. All right. The reason for this is saying radical 2 times radical 2, which is the same thing as 2. Or the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 gives you 2. So we're going to rewrite this again as 2 times radical, then I'll go back to brown. What do I have left under the radical? I have a 3 times a 2 times a 5. All right. And now that I have, there's no more pairs on the inside, and I have all prime numbers on the inside, I can now multiply those prime numbers together, and all that's going to, and I'm going to make sure I bring this 2 over, so 2 times radical 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 5 is 30. 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 5 is 30. So under radical 30. And that is my final answer. So radical 120 is equal to 2 times radical 30. All right. Say I picked two different factors instead of 12 and 10. Say I'd used the factors let's say I wanted to use smaller factors. Let's say I wanted to use 4 as one of my factors. Let's say if I use 4 times 30. Well, I know that 4 can be factored into 2 times 2. And those are prime numbers as we circled earlier. And 30 can be factored into 5 times 6. We know 5 is a prime number. And 6 factors into 2 times 3. So if we notice, it didn't matter which 2 factors we chose, we still ended up with the same 5 prime numbers. No matter which factors you start with, you will always end up with the same prime factorization. Remember that big word that was, so all of the prime numbers together make the prime factorization. Okay, class? And again, our answer is 2 radical 30. Now on your homework, the last 4 problems show us problems where we have a number outside of the radical and a number on the inside of the radical. It kind of looks like this 2 radical 30 over here, all right? And we have to simplify those. So let's try one of those ones next. So let's say I'm told that I want you to simplify 5 times radical 200. All right? I want to simplify 5 times radical 200. That could also be read as 5 times the square root of 200. Our process is not going to change. And we're going to worry about this 5 closer down to the last step. So it's going to come all the way down. So what you're going to do is you're still going to focus on your factor tree of just radical 200. All right? So let's look at our factors of 200. I know that 200 can be divided by 10. So I know 10 times 20 is 200. Again, 2 factors of 200 are 10 and 20 because 10 times 20 is equal to 200. Is 10 prime? No, it is not. It has 2 factors, 2 times 5. What about 20? That can be factored into 4 times 5. Is 2 prime? Yes. Its only factors are 1 in itself. Is 5 prime? Yes, its only factors are 1 in itself. What about 4? 4 can be factored into 2 times 2. And we know that 2 is prime. And we know that 5 is prime because we circled it already. So now we can rewrite radical 200. And we haven't done anything with this 5 yet. It's staying placed right there. We can rewrite this radical 200 as radical 2 times 5, radical 2 times radical 5 times radical 2 times radical 2 times radical 5. All right. Again, we took the prime factorization. In purple are the prime factorization of 200. And we wrote them all again underneath the radical, all being multiplied together. So now let's look for pairs again. I've got a pair of 2's, so I have 3 2's, so I can at least pair 2 of them together. And they don't have to necessarily be next to each other, as long as I circle 2 of them. So I can circle those 2, I could have circled these 2 as well. As long as I find a pair of them, and I'm able to take 1 out. I also have a pair of 5's here. A 5 here, and I have a 5 here. Again, they can be next to each other. They don't have to be next to each other, but there are 2 of them. I have a pair. All right. So I'm going to now take out one of the 5's. So I'm going to write it out here. So I have 5. I'm going to take out one of the 2's times 2. And then we're going to have radical So we took out 1, 5 and 1, 2. Then we're going to be left with a 2 underneath here. Okay. Again, we only took out one of each pair. All right. And then we were still left with the 2 that didn't have a pair underneath. Right? Anytime you have a pair, that none of the numbers in that pair should be inside anymore. So in this case, we had a pair of 2s, and that's where this 2 came from. But because we had this 1, 2 left here without a pair, that still gets brought down. And now after this part, we do 5 times 2, which is equal to 10. So because I'm running out of space, I'm going to say that 5 times 2, radical 2, is equal to 5 times 2, which is 10. Like I said, we can multiply those two together now. So this equals 10 times radical 2. Now we're almost done. At this point, we can come back up to this 5 that we had on the outside in the beginning, and it's going to stay on the outside. So we're going to bring this all the way down here, and it's going to remain on the outside as well. So now this becomes 5 times 5 times 2 times radical 2. So we need to multiply that 5 again on this side. It's 5 times 10 times radical 2. And our final answer ends up being 50 times radical 2. I realized that was a little further down. Our final answer is 50 times radical 2. So in the end, 5 radical 200 simplifies to 50 radical 2. All right. Hope you all watched the video and enjoyed. We'll go over this in class as well, but if you watch this at some point tonight, then you have a little more insight onto how to do half of the problems on your homework. Enjoy your evening, class.